Hello, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer at Functional Aesthetics EC. We're helping average guys perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. So in today's video, I am going to be answering a question that I frequently get or occasionally get from clients. And it's no wonder in today's society where, back in, let's say, Arnold Schwarzenegger's day, he actually had to tone his, drop weight so that they would let him be an actor, because big muscle bound or super muscular physiques and stuff were not very common in the film industry in the past, and indeed big muscular physiques were not super common prior to the late 1950s. So it's common for me to get people asking how much a muscle, or these actors and stuff, how can they get so muscular so quickly, or how much muscle can I expect to gain? And they all have unrealistic expectations of how much muscle they can gain in a month, in a year, or over the course of their lifting career. Now, when we're talking about gaining muscle weight here, we're talking about lean muscle weight. Obviously, you can gain more weight overall, but the bigger you get, the harder it is to stay lean. And so it's very uncommon to see a natural bodybuilder who is over 200 pounds and at single-digit body fat, just because it's very difficult to maintain that sort of size. So you'd be surprised actually to know that a lot of Hollywood actors, such as, let's say, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor, and various other action roles that he's done. Was it Hugh Jackman when he played the Wolverine? All these guys were using different forms of performance-enhancing drugs, sometimes steroids, to achieve the look that they were getting. And I don't know if I've done this on my YouTube channel before, but in some other posts that I've done, I talked about how they've done studies where guys who were basically, they had three different groups. They had a group where the people took steroids and didn't lift at all. They had a group that took no steroids and trained regularly. And then they had a group that took steroids and trained. And as you might guess, the group that took steroids and trained blew all the other ones away. But what you might not have guessed is that the group that was taking steroids and not exercising at all actually built more muscle than the group that was actually training and lifting weights and exercising without steroids. So you can make some pretty rapid gains on steroids. So for our purposes, I'm assuming that most of the people that watch my channel and watch my content are not going to be interested in taking steroids or performance-enhancing drugs. And so I want to talk a little bit about what can you reasonably expect to gain per month in your first year and your first year overall, and then in subsequent years of your lifting career. And then also, why is there a difference, and what are some of the variables that it can affect your potential and the rate at which you gain muscle. So first and foremost, most experts agree that between half a pound of muscle to 2 pounds of muscle per month is during your first year of training is achievable without the use of drugs. And now that's like I said, it's not total weight. We're talking about the amount of muscle per month that you're able to gain, and that's not including water, fat, anything like that, just pure muscle that you can gain. Okay, so the first factor that I want to talk about is age. It's very common for people to even as early as age 40, and I'm going to be 40 years old this next summer, to talk about how everything starts going downhill after you hit 40, and that you just can't lose weight as easily, and you can't build muscle as easily and stuff. And so I want to touch on what does the research actually say in regards to age. So as I talked about in some other videos, your testosterone production should not actually decrease significantly until around, sometime in your 60s, maybe possibly even your 70s. But that the reason why it does tend to decrease is more related to lifestyle factors such as increased responsibility, stress, and the stress that goes along with that. You have maybe you're not getting as much sleep when you're taking care of the babies, when you first have your first kids. You have more stress. You're spending less time in the gym. Maybe you're kind of running on the run all the time, so you don't have time to eat healthy meals, so you're grabbing fast food junk. And so that can all play a factor in affecting your hormonal level. Now, as far as muscle goes, though, the research actually shows, they did a study of elite masters athletes, so that showed no significant loss in muscle mass between the ages of 40 and 80 in those that continued to train. So you can definitely maintain that even all the way up, to 80 years old. And I actually had a guy that I took care of years ago when I was a nursing assistant, and had to do his, help him do his range of motion exercises. And he'd had multiple heart attacks, and he had like liver problems and stuff like that. And so when I first started working with him, his legs were like sticks and he couldn't even move them. I'd try to have him do a leg raise where I'd lift his leg off the bed, and then I'd tell him, hey, hold that leg up there, and then don't let it fall down when I take my hand away. And as soon as I'd start taking my hand away, his leg would just start to drop like a rock, and so I'd have to guide it down. Well, a couple months into working with him on this, he was actually able to lift his legs on his own, do scissors kicks, and we did all sorts of other types of exercises, hip bridges in the beds, horizontal abduction, hip abduction, things like that. And this is a guy that had a lot of health problems too, and he was in his 80s. A person who doesn't have all those health problems is going to be even better than that. So the next significant area that affects your potential to grow muscle is sleep. And you've probably heard this one before, but sleep is so crucial and important because it's involved in your glucose metabolism. Your insulin sensitivity can be affected. If you're not getting enough sleep, this is also the time when your cortisol levels should be decreasing, and it's also the key time when human growth hormone, which works in opposition to cortisol and stuff like that, starts to increase. Human growth hormone is obviously responsible for building more lean muscle tissue, helping you to burn more fat, and just associated with youth and vitality overall. They actually had a study of some college students. They followed them for a few months, and they had the one group that was getting 8 hours of sleep per night. I think it was 8.5 hours of sleep a night, and the other group was getting like they only allowed them to get 5.5 hours of sleep per night. And at the conclusion of the study, the group that was sleeping only 5.5 hours per night actually lost 60% of their muscle mass, which is quite significant. And then the other group, I believe they're all strength training as well at this time, was able to actually increase their muscle by around 40%, which just goes to show how crucial and how critical it can be to make sure that you're getting adequate rest and recovery. Because the lifting that you do in the gym and stuff like that, and the exercise you do, that is the stimulus to tell your body it's a stress on the body, right? It tells the body, hey, if we don't get stronger to combat this in the form of producing more muscle and stuff like that, we're gonna be broken. So we have to grow stronger. But if you never allow your body that time to recover and rest, recover from the damage that you're doing to it during the exercise program, then it's just going to become weaker. So short-term stress is good, long-term stress is a bad thing. So another key area that, and probably right up there with sleep in terms of how well it is known, but is your diet. This is going to be a very key, crucial area in determining how much muscle that you can build. Now, in terms of building more muscle, it's not you don't have to be as meticulous as you do when you're trying to lose body fat. When you're trying to build muscle, as long as you are in a calorie surplus and you're getting sufficient amount of protein, so we typically would aim for about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight, and you could even go probably a little bit lower than that, provided you're getting enough total calories overall, just because carbohydrates tend to be very muscle sparing because they're anabolic, because they tend to release or increase the rate of insulin production in the body. So they're going to help to prevent you from breaking down muscle tissue, which is the opposite of when you're cutting back on your calories. And that's why when you're cutting back on your calories, you tend to require more protein to make sure that you're not using up your lean tissue to provide for the protein or amino acid requirements of your body. With that being said, on the carbohydrate end of things, oftentimes carbohydrates get a bad rap, but one reason that you don't want to be eating too much protein when you're trying to build more muscle is that protein is very satisfying. It fills you up. It's hard to overeat it, which is great for fat loss. But if you're eating too much protein, it'll prevent you from eating enough calories to be used to build more new muscle tissue. And it's actually, very poor form of energy as well. Okay, so the next area that can wreak havoc in your muscle building goals would be stress. I briefly touched on that in the section on sleep, but stress can really throw all your hormonal systems out of whack, increasing levels of cortisol. Cortisol tends to pull glucose from your glycogen stores, and when that runs out, then it can start to draw and create glucose from amino acids and stuff like that. And this is why actually, getting enough, carbohydrates and stuff like that can actually be beneficial to kind of help to blunt the cortisol, blunt the stress response a little bit, and bring that down a little. Now, some other things that you can do to help to combat the effects of stress, because we can't always avoid stress. People always are talking about, decrease the stress in your life and everything, and ultimately there are things that you can do to help do that, but sometimes you don't really have a choice. You're in, a school situation, work situations, family situations, and there's just going to be stress in your life that sometimes you can't avoid. So the best thing that you can do is figure out ways that you can cope with the stress that you do encounter better. So some supplements that you can take would be things like green tea. So the theanine in green tea helps to increase levels of serotonin and GABA, neurotransmitters that help to produce a state of relaxation. Also, you can take something called kava kava. Now, kava kava was shown in some studies to have negative effects on the liver, and so after doing some more research, they determined that some parameters within which you want to use kava kava to help manage anxiety. So kava kava, you want to get less than 300 milligrams, or equal to or less than 300 milligrams of it per day, and don't use it for more than 24 days in a row. It's for short-term use. You want to cycle off of it. So if you're experiencing a particular high level of stress in your life at a particular point, supplementing with this can be helpful, but you don't want to do it for the long term because it can have some negative effects on the body. And actually, I was doing some research in another area, and I might do this in a future video, just about how a lot of times different plant chemicals and stuff can actually stress out different organs in the body, and so it's best to kind of get a variety of different types of foods in your diet to avoid that happening in the first place. Other non-supplement things that you can do to help manage your stress are things like breathing practices. A basic breathing practice that has been known to help reduce stress, and this has to do with the fact that when you inhale, it increases sympathetic nervous system activity, or that fight or flight response, right? When you exhale, it tends to bring that, activate parasympathetic nervous system activity, right? And so if you increase the ratio of exhalation, or how amount of time you're breathing out, related to the amount of time that you're breathing in, you can induce a state of calm. So there's a form of breathing where you will actually breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and then try to exhale to the count of 8 seconds. And you do that a couple times, and it helps to slow your heart rate down and produce a little bit more calm state in the body. The Wim Hof breathing method, which I've been getting into lately, actually does the opposite thing. It helps to actually stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, increase adrenaline, which actually helps to increase the body, the circulation and stuff to in your body, And for a short period of time, that's good because it helps you to stay warmer. And then the positive effect, because actually cold therapy, doing cold plunges and stuff like that, is really good for combating stress as well. And actually the reason I started doing it last year, because I was under a lot of stress with some things. And I decided one day I'm just going to go jump in the snowbank, and everything is just kind of this random thought. And I noticed that it actually did help me feel a lot better. Initially, when you go into it, it's an increase in stress, and then when you get out of it, you have this spike, and then this increased state of calm afterwards. So, going back to that breathing technique, to kind of demonstrate how that would look, you breathe in for 4 seconds. So. So I'm not going to continue to do this, but it does feel actually very good. Doing that breathing movement, I think I might actually do this after I get done with the video here. It's been a long week and I'm actually pretty tired. But yeah, different forms of breathing can actually help you to maintain focus better and study better. But for the purposes here, we're talking about relieving stress. And so those breathing methods can be useful, particularly in combination with cold therapy as well. And then, of course, a balanced diet can be helpful as well. Getting enough healthy fats in your diet, not too much sugar or refined carbohydrates, getting enough protein. Essentially, the diet that's going to be best for building muscle tissue overall is going to be a good diet that's going to be to help you combat stress as well. And this is why, overall health has to do with multiple different dimensions. It has to do with your emotional state, your spiritual state, your physical state, and your social state. So as well as the diet you're eating and stuff. So you don't want to just focus on just eating a healthy diet, and you don't want to just focus on just exercising, and you don't want to just focus on just doing aerobic exercise, and you don't want to focus on just doing strength exercise. You want to get a little bit of everything to help develop that balance in your body over time. While you may focus more on one than another at certain points, there should be balance overall for the most part. So the next area, and one that most people are probably thinking about, the first thing that they think about when they think about building more muscle, is your hormones. And initially, everybody's going to think about testosterone. However, as I talked about, I think in a previous video, is that testosterone is not nearly as important as it was previously thought in terms of building more muscle. And depending on whether you're a man or a woman, obviously it can be a lot less, because men and women's muscles tend to respond similarly to strength training, although women do tend to respond better to a higher repetition, higher volume training than men, just because they have more slow twitch muscle fibers and more estrogen, which helps them to have better capacity for endurance and also recover faster from their workouts. But overall, testosterone does play an important role, but even if your testosterone levels aren't optimal, it might decrease your motivation to train and try to build more muscle and stuff like that. But there are other factors that can affect that. But testosterone is an important factor. So things that can help you to keep your hormones balanced is, again, eating that balanced diet, not doing too much aerobic activity, and making sure that you are doing, heavy strength training, not like in a balance of that too, but in the moderate rep ranges, where you're doing you can also be doing supersets of things, doing power type movements and stuff where you're moving weights, accelerate them at a fast rate, sprint work, doing sprints up and down stairs, sprints down the block, jumping, things like that. Short duration, high intensity exercise has a tendency to increase testosterone levels. And then also keeping your body fat levels lower. The more fat you have in your body, the more estrogen your body is going to produce, because that's estrogen is sequestered in the fat cells, which then also causes more fat to be produced. So you want to kind of balance all those different things. One other thing that can negatively impact testosterone levels is sugar and alcohol consumption. when you consume too much of these, and if your goal is to build more muscle or get leaner, especially if you're trying to drop body fat, I would just the first thing you can do is completely eliminate all sugar and alcohol from your diet. And a lot of people are going to see significant results just doing that. But in terms of muscle building, it's also a negative effect too, to drink too much alcohol or to consume too much sugar. Okay, so the last area that I want to talk about is genetics. So, there are just some people that are, going to have a propensity to be able to build bigger muscles and get stronger simply because of their genetics. You'll see like people who are elite long distance runners, but if they try to become a bodybuilder, they would really, really struggle simply due to their genetics in that regard. Now, some of the things that genetics can relate to is the length of your muscles. So certain guys you see where their biceps tend to almost grow right out of the joint in the crook of their elbow, and other guys, their biceps seem to start a little bit higher up on the arm. That a guy who has a longer muscle belly like that, or a longer muscle, is going to have the potential to develop more size and strength than the guy with smaller muscles. A guy with the other thing is, tendon insertion points. If you go back to physics, if the tendon, let's say this, you have your biceps or whatever, right? And if the tendon, inserts farther away from the elbow joint on one guy, he's going to have a mechanical advantage, which makes it so they can lift more weight than the guy who has his tendon attached closer to the axis of rotation or the elbow joint. Some other things would be, limb length ratios. So if you're doing squatting, guys who have longer, femurs, or their thigh bones are longer, are going to have a harder time squatting down to parallel and also activating their thigh muscles as much. And it's going to become more hip dominant and lower back dominant exercise for these sorts of individuals. So these are just a few different factors. Other factors would include, the muscle fiber type that you have. If you have more fast twitch muscle fibers, these ones that are, going to help you make you a better sprinter are also going to make it so that you can grow more muscle and size or strength more easily than a guy with, more slow twitch muscle fiber distribution. And things like that. Okay, so last but not least, effective programming is also going to play a role in building, optimizing your muscle gains. So if you are doing a bunch of running, or you're doing a lot of high volume training, you're playing a lot of other sports and stuff while you're also trying to add more muscle, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. If you're doing a lot of calisthenics exercises, maybe in the beginning you start gaining more muscle, but ultimately in the end, gaining more size and strength comes down to progressive overload. So you either have to be doing more weight, more sets, more reps, less rest period in between, or any number of different variables to continue to challenge your body for it to grow. But in general, the typical muscle building scheme would be 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions per set at 70 to 80% of your 1 repetition maximum. That's going to kind of make up the bread and butter of things to help you build bigger sized muscles. Now, to add a little variety and to kind of shock the body or shock the muscles into growing a little bit, from time to time you want to branch outside of that and do things like maybe some powerlifting stuff, where you're lifting really heavy weights for a while and, increasing your strength, because ultimately you do need to get stronger at some point to continue to grow bigger. And then from time to time you can maybe just crank out like 100 reps of something, or above 30 of something, and that'll help you as well to kind of break out of a rut. Sometimes if you are continually adding more weight to the bar and then you kind of get stuck for a while, sometimes lowering the weight for a while and focusing on increasing your reps and then going back to the heavy lifting can help you out a little bit. Okay guys, so hopefully you enjoyed this video, you found it informative. Maybe it'll help to take away some stuff to your own training and help you improve your gains in the gym. If you did like the video, hit that like button below so other people that might enjoy this kind of content can see it as well. If you'd like to see more content related to this kind of topic where it's all about building more muscle or even cutting body fat, how to improve athletic performance, how to train around injuries and to prevent them from happening in the first place, as well as different mobility routines and things of that nature, then consider subscribing to the channel by hitting the button in the lower right hand corner of the screen. And we'll see you all next time for more health and fitness related information. Thanks guys for watching.